Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and partners, welcome to the G20 Interfaith Forum for this year. So we were here yesterday in this specific room, and we were discussing together the role of religious leaders in dealing with crisis in the Arab region. And many of the guests have questioned the role of youth in this situation. And the question will be here today in this panel, discussing how the role of this generation of youth full of energy will sparkle in the region. They will tell us incredible stories about how they are responding to crisis, how during the times of unexpected things happening in the region, like wars, revolutions, natural catastrophes, and even the COVID-19, but despite all of these challenges, they have been the sparkling light and the source of light towards dealing with crisis. So let us start by seeing our first guest and the message that he's having with us. Let's start.
Reconciliation is the only way that we get the peace back in our country. And I think the youth generation will pave the way to get it back.
Hello. Welcome, our dear Marcel. Marcel Moussa, marhaba. Thank you so much for this lovely message that you're holding from your place, Syria, right? Très bien. So, Marcel, you are a lawyer. You are holding a master's degree in peace conflict studies, right? From a university in Germany. You are also currently working with an organization's name, Tastaqil, that supports and empowers women in the region in political and social aspects. You are also leading some initiatives, Marcel, within CAICID International Dialogue Center, right? Okay, then, let's wait and hear more stories about you later on. But meanwhile, please join me in inviting our next guest. Next guest, thank you. Yes.
Believing in young people's capabilities, lauding their voices internationally, regionally, nationally, involving them in policy-making processes. It's our path towards a sustainable, peaceful world.
Thank you so much for this lovely message. Hey, let's welcome together our dear Monica from Egypt. Monica Todros. Welcome, Monica. Marhaba. Just to let you know that Monica is newly bride, so congratulations. Welcome, Monica. Monica, you're a program manager at Ma'at for Peace, Development and Human Rights, right? Okay, so you have participated recently in a lot of youth exchange programs, and you have enriched your careers with diversity and interculturality as well as interfaith, right? So you have tried your career to, and especially during the pandemic, to use your skills toward achieving more sustainable goals and development for achieving the interfaith cultural dialogue, even though this crisis, right? So let's hear more about your story later on. But meanwhile, join me as well as our dear Marcel to welcome our next guest. Next guest will be from Saudi Arabia, but meanwhile, let's watch his message.
In order to move forward as nations, we must stand against hate speech, and there's nobody better than the young generation to do that. They have the power, the energy to create the change we want and the world we want, a world free of hate speech.
Hey, yes, a world full without hate speech, hopefully. Thank you, Muad Mohammed bin Jnifan, for this strong message. Muad, you have a lot of programs and events and initiatives, and you're a specialist in the peace dialogue in Saudi Arabia, right? Good. Your initiative is called Salam for Cultural Communication. And as I know, you have a lot of other initiatives ongoing that I'm sure you're going to tell us more about it later on. But meanwhile, let us invite another person from Saudi Arabia. But let's
How
see.
do you bridge the gap in dialogue? By developing a creative space that not only brings us closer, but allows for more understanding and witnessing of each other's stories.
Thank you, Amira, and welcome. Amira is a creative soul, as we are seeing from the video. Amira, you are a facilitator of improvisation and theatrical techniques for healing, expression, and fostering intercultural dialogue. So you have started your career and journey of healing as a way to claim your own voice. And this is what we are going to see. And by this, it's not just your voice. You are healing with other people's voice and making them heard, right? Awesome. So let's see our fifth guest, who is also from the Arab region. Video.
Education is the way to achieve a sustainable development. Education is the way to build a peaceful society based on dialogue. Education is the way of a future for societies. My message today, education can be a change world.
Hello. Our message is coming from Morocco. Marhaba Sukaina, hello. So Sukaina, you are a Moroccan researcher, human rights activist. You have done volunteer, and you have done great job in being one of the represented African youth in preparing the 2030 agenda for the SDGs in New York. Huh? So this is a super for, like, I mean, an Arab young lady being presented there in this creation is fantastic. Thank you so much for joining. Marhaba, welcome. So before starting our talk, I wanted to say that 1.3 billion is the number of youth in the world, which is huge. And among this number, 115 is in the Arab world. This is according to UN research source. So the number, when we say it, it resonates in our minds, which makes us feel part of it, feel engaged with it. So, and we should be proud maybe here as being people that we are doing this change, being this sparkle of hope, of sharing faith and interfaith in our communities during a crisis. And this is what we are going to see now. And we will start with you, Marcel, as we started in the introduction. Thank you. So, Marcel, in your experience, as I know a little bit of your project, could you please tell us and tell our guests how you, as a young person, Syrian living abroad, made you feel connected to your country, and how through your experience you claimed to be, you empowered youth to claim to be agents for peace, for social cohesion and change in building bridges of interfaith and fostering social cohesion in your country.
Yeah, thank you, Khadija. First of all, I want to thank Kaisid for this opportunity to give us this space to introduce ourselves, to express ourselves, to present our problems, to give us this space, at least to discuss. Going back to your question, yes, I will give you an example what we did in Syria. Maybe I will answer your question. Yeah, me and a couple of friends, we thought, what should we do to face this crisis in our country? And as you know, I am coming from Syria, and we have a lot of crisis there. We still ongoing crisis there. So yes, we thought that we should engage in this process, should be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And I still remember what Jesus said to one of his disciples when he was walking on the water. And he told to Peter, just focus on me, not the storm. So that means focus on the solution, not the problem. And we took that as a motto. Yes, we made an initiatives. We gathered a couple of youth people in one place from different regions and religions, just to discuss about mutual problems, mutual issues. Maybe we will reach our goals, because we put it two goals, one on the short term, just to gather these youth people, because we know our problem in Syria that we don't talk to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the long-term goal was maybe it will be the way for the reconciliation. So that was our initiatives. And I think we succeeded by doing that. And after that, we moved that to the social media, because we wanted to promote our initiatives. And maybe we will give the idea for the Syrians youth generation in other places. Maybe they will benefit from this idea.
Thank you so much, Marcel. When we were in the backstage discussing and talking about that, you mentioned a success story actually that touched me personally. And I would like that you shared the story of this young man who changed his life and his life being changed through the activities.
Yes, I think one of our friends, he was so depressed and by the situation, economical situation in Syria. And I know maybe also you know that the situation is not so easy for especially for the youth generation, because after the graduate, we don't have any opportunities. So yeah, we asked him to join us in these initiatives, and he started to help the people, and also to discuss with other youth people. And by doing that, I think he felt that he's a part of the solution. And I think that was the point. Yeah, he started to be more active, and I think we hired him from this depression.
Thank God. So saving people's life through the initiatives that we are doing is also something that our dear Monica, I guess, worked on it a lot, especially during the pandemic. So Monica, how you have directly engaged with religious leaders and policymakers to heal actually from the pandemic and during the pandemic. So I've heard a lovely story also about this collaboration, if you'd like to share it with our guests.
Sure. First, I want to share myself for thankful to Kaisid, not only because of this panel, but because of the support for the young people and for their initiatives around the world, and specifically in the Arab region. And this initiative was supported as well by Kaisid. We believe in that young people and religious leaders are active partners who should be involved with policymakers and stakeholders to address societal issues. And one of these societal issues that we face today is the COVID-19 pandemic and its repercussions. Hence, our initiatives, which is promoting human solidarity through interreligious dialogue during COVID-19 pandemic, was designed to raising the awareness of religious leaders, young people, on the importance of the rules at that time and how they can work together to address social repercussions such as social stigma and incitement of hate, especially among the vulnerable people during COVID-19 pandemic, by interfaith initiatives. So how we can launch grassroots initiative that include religious dimensions. And within our initiative, we relied on different approaches. One of them which was
know-how approach. So we held training course, online training course for 3 weeks to interfaith youth. As well, they learned during the training course how they can launch initiatives, how they can read their interventions on to be like launching counter-narrative campaigns against hate speech and opening a space for interreligious dialogue between them. So we are not closing the worship places during a pandemic, so we close the voices of religious leaders. Of course not, but we have alternative spaces to do so. And at the end, in second phase, they keep in touch and cooperating to implement 3 real initiatives on the ground, like Facebook page to raising the awareness, as well they issue some documents and papers and doing series of videos to send spiritual and hopeful messages.
Yeah, it's very good actually to send these messages and to understand the audience that we are going to send these messages to. So these different platforms helped you guys to send the messages effectively in Egypt, but also not only in Egypt but also in Saudi Arabia, where our guest Muad have tried to understand the audience but differently, using different tools, research method and techniques in order to see how his target audience will collaborate and then be impacted. So Muad, could you please tell us some best practices that you have used in designing these safe space for dialogues in Saudi Arabia, and how you managed to reach your target specifically and achieve the impact that you are achieving nowadays?
Thank you so much, Khadija, and thank you again, as my colleague mentions, we thank KSEED for giving us this opportunity as a young generation, as a youth, so we can spread this message and also make sure that we are also part of that solution and part of that decision making. As you mentioned, I'm representing an organization called Salam for Cultural Communication. Yeah. Salam working in creating that safe space and creating that space for dialogue in a different method in a different organization. As we started back in 2015, where we helped trying to create some of the research that we trying to build in Saudi Arabia about dialogue and about culture, and also how we can create and build this kind of culture between people in Saudi Arabia and also for the people who are living abroad, and how we can create that space. So what we did for the past few years is how we can create that space and how we can connect people from different backgrounds, different cultures in this safe space. We created a program which is called Tawasul, which is mainly in how we can build the circle between Saudis and non-Saudis, and also for people with a different background. And the main goal and the thing that we're trying to achieve for the past few years, it was how we can stop hate speech and how we can also build, and as my colleague Marcel mentioned, that it is very important that we to be and focus on the solution in this time, and focus in the area where we will be part of that solution. So this is what we did in Salam. We work in so many research and academic research that help us understand the issue and also understanding how we can create those solutions. So now we move on for the next step or the next levels, as we say, which is mainly creating those space for dialogue and create those ideas. And one of the interesting programs that we're trying to create for the past years, which is called, and I'm proudly to be part of the program, as I always go, we created a program called the Young Leadership Program, where we train Saudis and how they will be practicing, how understanding those concepts, dialogue and cultural communication, and also help them to have the main focus in this area. And the result was amazing. We have a lot of leaders who participated with us in this program, where they want to be that solution. They want to be the young generation who created that solution. So this is basically what happened in Salam. Those kind of spaces and the space for dialogue and the safe space for dialogue and standing against hate speech, it's where the area Salam working. Again, I'm proud to be part of that program.
And we are proud of you as well, all of us. Thank you so much, Muad, for this motivation and energy in sharing your experience. I feel that I'm living your experience from my chair here. You mentioned a lot of important things about how diversity and inclusion is important in your community. And by this, I would like to invite our guest here, Amira, as a Saudi woman, also working on diversity and working on inclusion, but from a different perspective, different angle, which is using a special and creative tool, actually, that I will give her the floor later on to talk more about it, but using the theater as a tool for change and for inclusion and for giving women, Saudi women, the voice that they will need. So, Amira, please let us know more about how the Theater for Change is working and the impact it's creating nowadays.
Thank you so much, Khadija. And I know how important a safe space is. So, of course, I would like to thank everyone who made us be invited and made us be a crucial part of this specific and current safe space. So with theater, and especially with providing the voice for, not just for women, but for everyone really in the Arab region and the world really, which is why we're here and why we're talking, is I've always been drawn to theater. I've always been drawn to role playing and the importance of play itself. And it was always, it provided a safe space for me. So when I got into theater and I saw that it can be beautifully and incredibly combined with psychology and how it can be utilized to provide a safe space and be a conversation opener, it can be a tool for dialogue. And when I got to play different roles, whether it be internally and externally for my own, but also roles of people, it made me access empathy that I didn't know I could access, because I got to play different roles of different people here in the room. Role that is so vastly and drastically different from my own role. And that can be incredibly utilized for empathy, but can incredibly utilized for conflict resolution, peace building, and dialogue here.
Yeah, and I think also that using this technique can allow you to send messages of faith and hope and positivity. So if you have like in your mind one of these messages or how it's impacting concretely one of your beneficiaries, for example, I would like that you shared with us.
A message for faith. Well, I can be honest with you. The theater and the psychology made me connect to my own spirituality more and my own faith more. So when I mentioned that I can play different roles and it can be my own, it can be someone else's. So as simple as, that empty chair that we have here.
Yeah.
It's our space as directors of theater and psychodrama and all the tools that, it's not worth mentioning the names because there's so many now. We provide a safe space, but if someone is not comfortable sharing their story, we can create a role for them that is a representative of a collective story that we have. So, we could give you an example. Who's sitting here in this chair? What are their names? Who are they? And so on. And then we can play tag games. This is a new person that we have here, and that person is representing a collective story that we have. And we can just play it. You can have a whole theater right now. That's a social theater and improvise. Everyone can participate in the audience.
Yeah, I'm really dear Kaisi team. We are really. I think it's not just me, but we would like to see one day how this works concretely in front of us. So maybe let's plan it for the next year, G20 Interfaith Forum. Thank you so much, Amira, for sharing your lovely and creative, inspiring story. Sukaina, how are you? Good.
Hello.
Thank you so much. So, Sukaina, I know, as well as our dear guests, but not the other guests, that you are being so creative and energetic person in dealing with policymakers during the pandemic towards achieving inclusive educational space in Morocco. So, I'm so curious to know how a young lady in Morocco managed actually to deal with different policymaker places and persons there to achieve that.
Thank you, Khadija. Thank you, my colleague, for the presentations, the rich presentations. Before I will start to thank Kaisid for this very interesting opportunity for the youth in Arab region. We know that in our world, we cannot avoid crisis and disaster with certainty. Their consequence can be mitigated through planning and preparedness. Although major events affect the whole of society, their impact on young people is more pronounced at all levels: economic, social, religious, cultural, as well as political. Our area in Morocco and the area of our project, Tamkeen, it's to enhance the capacity for the young people and also to talking about like the disaster, COVID-19 in Morocco, especially in Morocco. So we have cooperated with 4 associations in the national and the regional level in Morocco. And we have prepared an extensive training program as an initial distance to learning experience. We relate on education on the key to developing capacity, fast increases, taught a set of remote trainings of the school and university students from different groups: African migrants, Jewish and Muslim students, and the youth from the rural and urban world. And the goal of the create this initiative is to create a different group to enhance the capacity and also the field of the crisis management, as strengthen of the foundation of acceptance of the older solidarity despite their difference, as well in their field leadership, solidarity, and also management the crisis. Also, the technology had an important role in creating communication with the target groups, so more than 70, 60, 100 students. And the success of this story, of this voluntary initiative, is creating an educational platform, strengthening the capacity of young people, and the gateway for the communication between the decision makers and the dialogue meetings will discuss the problem and the facing young people in Morocco.
Yeah, so thank you, Soukaina, for sharing this success story. But I'm sure that this success went through a lot of challenges, and we cannot succeed like that, or we go through, especially during the pandemic, which is like a crisis, yes,
Especially in Africa,
a crisis that we all like struggled with it. And your project aimed to collaborate with or highlight and shed light on these diverse groups that you are working with. So could you please tell us some of the challenges that you have faced?
So the big challenge in the face to this volunteer project in the coronavirus crisis problem of digitalization in Morocco, especially in Africa, in the rural area, and it was difficult to integrate the people from the rural world in this initiative. Especially they don't have access to internet, and also they don't have like the materials to integrate, for example, in our program, distance learning.
Yeah, so totally right. Digitalization and the access to media and digital tools can be a very high important challenge. But I guess not only in Morocco, but in our different Arab countries. Marcel, I think you have something similar as a challenge that you're facing as you're working in a country, implementing your project in another country, and dealing with different other groups. So what's the challenge that you must tackle, the most important challenge that you have faced?
Yes, we faced a lot of challenges, but we could turn these challenges to an opportunity. But I will just give you 2 examples of challenges. The first one, the environment of the place that in which we work could play a big role, because before any initiatives or any project, we must obtain a lot of approvals from the government offices, and that's something not so easy in Syria. But actually, we found a solution. That was because we worked under the umbrella of the church. So that was our solution. And the second challenge, I think, the limited access to the internet because of the situation, ongoing situation in Syria. So yes, we faced that. Yeah, for example, we couldn't attend any Zoom meetings for a long time. So that was also yeah, a challenge.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, Marcel, for sharing these challenges with us. I'm sure that, Amira, you have other challenges because nothing comes easily into the implementation without stepping in these challenges.
Absolutely, yes. I believe one of the main issues or the main challenges that we were tackling and navigating, we're not doing purely theater, and theater has, generally is being more evolved in Saudi Arabia, especially with the Ministry of Culture and more investments in stakeholders in it. So it's really, really good news that it's being implemented more as theater. But we're not purely doing theater, we're combining psychology, we're combining generational trauma in it, we're combining drama therapy and so on. And psychology is also, it doesn't have that broader aspects of the kinds of it. So what we deal with is psychodrama too, which is basically theater and psychology. And it's not, it's relatively very new, especially in the Arab region itself. So we have to travel back and forth, my partner and I, in this project. And we have to learn as much as we can, get certified in it, and then come back and localize it and build the content, especially in Arabic. So that's something that we're constantly navigating. But it's also an opportunity for us to see the hunger and the need for something like that to exist here.
Yeah, the hunger and the need. So this is one of the things that not only in terms of information, but also in terms of knowing more the ground. And this is, I guess, what you have, Muad, started doing there, is to understand the ground that you are working with. So any challenges have been faced during the research phase that you have been to, or the implementation phase of your project in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, absolutely. When you're talking about any project, there is going to be a lot of challenging and a lot of things that we have to, let's say, tackle so we can move on and move forward with this idea. I always mention this idea that when it's come to hate speech, it's first of all, we have to understand it, and we have to create an awareness regarding that word and regarding what does it mean and how we can also implement our work regarding this idea. So one of the main challenges that we face in both parties when to try to create a space for a different background, different culture, where they sit down together and talk about their culture, talking about their ideas, their challenges also, it's the idea of stereotyping every little act. That's one of the challenging that you will have to create. And one of the important aspects that we try to talk to them about, it's those stereotyping and those ideas is not just something that you will have to discuss and you will have to talk about as an conversation. It's something that has to be addressed as an issue, and let's talk about it and let's break those barriers so we can move on. So mainly this is the challenge that we're trying to focus on and trying to solve, as much as it is a space for everyone to share their ideas and share their collective work, let's say. Other than that, it will be easier to move on. But this is the thing that we're facing, and this is the thing that we're trying to create a solution for. We will let people sit down, no matter what their background, no matter what are they doing in their life. It's time to sit down and talk about those issues, and talk about the culture, and talking about and many aspects, different aspects in their life. So this is mainly the challenge that we're trying to face and we're trying to focus on during the solutions. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I can imagine how complex the situation is, but I'm sure through the stories that you have mentioned earlier that you have, how to say it, you overcome these challenges. Monica, you have also informed me that during the process of the implementation, a lot of challenges have been faced, especially with policymakers, the public institutions, etc. So what's the main challenge that you have faced during this implementation of the project in Egypt?
In our initiative or project, that we have two main challenges. First, the challenge with the fair representation for gender. gender equality within the project and initiative. So when we talk about interfaith initiatives and representation for religious leaders or interfaith, yes, that we have a problem here is that we want to integrate women, to have not only integrate women like sitting on the panel that we have 6 men and only 1 woman. It's not gender representation equality. So here we are seeking in our initiative to have 50% of our target group and participants females. So it's a little bit risky, and we were fair that how we can ensure that. But later, by integrating women who serve in the churches, in mosques, and the religious institutions, so you are not only targeting the religious leaders like shuyukh or priestess, kahana, but only the female leaders who are serving within the religious institutions. And the second challenge that one of initiatives that our participants working on, it was a mobile application to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, but from different perspective. So we divided the mobile application to have some advice regarding the food, regarding the stories, the songs, the books, how you can entertain your time during quarantine and etc. But we couldn't upload it on Google or iOS because they refused to upload any app that include COVID-19, but it's not issued by public institutions or World Health Organization. So here, I think it's important to have a cooperation between policymakers and young people and their initiatives to promote and help them to promote their ideas and creative and innovation to be implemented on the reality.
Exactly. So, and this is, I guess, one of the lessons learned you as a person and as an organization have learned from these challenges is how to turn it and face it and make it into a collaborative work, maybe with the policymakers and public institutions. Yeah. So thank you so much, Monica. And I guess, Muad, as well, you have turned the challenges into a very creative and collaborative way. So how was that?
Well, like you mentioned, that we live in a new world right now, and we're trying to think creatively regarding the solution that we're trying to create in many aspects. So it's a moving process, and it's a moving idea that we try to create in Salam and also different institutions in Saudi Arabia. And it's what it's important about it that we focus on in different areas, and we connect it to cultural communication, we connect it to dialogue. As my colleague Monica mentioned, when it's come to the equal gender, as an idea, we always say that it's a big and a broad idea, that it's a dialogue, and everyone should be included in that dialogue, which is true. But at the same time, how we make sure that we implement that everyone will be involved equally in that dialogue. So as I mentioned, the Young Leader Program, it's we push forward so hard that we make sure that the participant, which is basically it's 60% every single year that we host, and we have to make sure that 30 girls and 30 boys who will be participating in that program. This idea, it's very important that we think of it this way. Some people will say that it doesn't matter as long as you're accepting anybody. No, it does matter. We will have to make sure there is a voice for everyone to participate and share their ideas in that regard. And that goes on. And some of people like asking us, why you guys tackling an environmental issue? It's not the way, it's not the process, and it's not the level that you guys work on. No, it's very important, because when we talk about dialogue could be talking about anything, could be talking about environment, talking about peace building. It's not only limited to that level. So tackling those issues and also thinking about those issues, it's very important. It's the method that we use during dialogue. It's not about the subject itself. So I think this is the creativity what we're trying to bring up among the society, among us as a youth.
Creativity, diversity through different relations, through different, gender balance, ethnicity groups, the communities, the religious groups, is always makes us feel that we are rich from our knowledge, our behavior, our attitudes also will change. So I will take it as a recommendation, and I guess our dear partners here as well, to think about all these aspects when designing their projects, making sure that all these elements are always present. I guess, Monica, you too, you have talked about the creativity, the diversity, etc. in our work. What do you recommend here from your chair to the public here and for the policymakers? And this is your chance, this is your voice here to be heard.
Thank you. So when you say the knowledge and when you mentioned that we feel enriched with knowledge, and that's exactly it, because we have stories. As the youth, we have stories, our generation have stories, the generation that's gonna come are gonna have stories. So how do we actually preserve that? How do we preserve that dialogue and that conversation? And how do we heal together as a nation? How do you heal together as a community? By passing on those stories. So preserving the heritage and making sure that those stories are passed on in order to heal, in order to move, grow, and learn, but through actually those youth initiatives, through the action-based learning, because that's all what I do. That's all about theater. Because I don't tell you, I show you. Because we actually have to. It's like a kid. A kid learns by doing things. And that's what we do in the initiative. We exactly have the tools to learn and to implement and to actually have a conversation with everyone here. Like, you have a story, you have a story, you have a story. Everyone here has a story. Everyone in this room have a story. So how do we preserve those stories and pass it on? And that's exactly what I believe is, the solution, at least for what we're trying to do, to how to preserve that heritage and the stories that we have through the action-based learning.
Yes, totally right. And the very important point is how to make our communities heal from the crisis. The crisis not only related to cultural and interfaith crisis, but also like very big crisis. And I guess here Marcel have been very active in contributing in his community and to the people around him on supporting them on how to heal from this crisis, but from different angles. Marcel, what do you recommend here from this place specifically to the future of this future generation?
Yeah, I think my recommendation will be emphasizing the need and the necessity to build a leadership personality or youth leadership personality, and by developing the leadership capability. And that's not a decision we'll take by the politicians, as much as it requires a thoughtful educational policies. That's what I want to say. And there's another, not recommendation, but I really want to thank everyone who came here and to listen us. And I really want to recommend for KAICEED, maybe the next year or the next forum, we can make a mixed panel between the youth and the policymakers. Yeah. Because there's, I think I want to thank everyone, but if we can look to the audience, so yes, that's told us something, Yeah. So I think maybe the next forum, yeah, we will solve this one. And another thing I want to say, I just want to remember the refugees in everywhere, and especially in my country, Syria. And maybe it will be a recommendation for the policies makers to keep in their mind that, yes, we should think about the refugees, and maybe we can find a very quick solution, or at least to push for a solution.
Totally right. And I agree with you, Marcel, on everything you have said, actually. And yesterday, as I started my speech here today, yesterday, this room, this specific place was for religious leaders and the discussion about the barriers as well. But the audience were asking about what is the youth representation? And when it comes to reality, it's the same thing. So in our Arab countries, there is the policy makers, these public institutions, the people who are acting actually, and who are not acting but talking a lot, but when it comes to ask them to involve the young people, the active soul, sparkling energy, they will just disappear. And this is maybe a mistrust, or we need to work on it more and more. And I guess from each one of us here, from his own background, from his own country, can start working on this step by step until or towards achieving a common sense of inclusivity of the younger generation in the process itself. So I guess, Sukaina, you also in Morocco are having some recommendations to the government, to the policy makers, and also to the other organizations.
The first, I want to thank Marcel for your strong recommendation and also my colleagues. I have two recommendations, one for the policymakers and one for the KAICIID organization. The first, I hope that the decision makers will focus on the importance of the teaching young people how to manage the crisis, taught educational programs, and that there will be equality between the rural and urban world, especially in the development and the technological field, to ensure the implementation of the development and the plan for sustainable development. And my message for KAICIID organization, which of this first organization in the Arab world interests about youth, it's to be a voice for Arab youth also, and to convey our message to youth. It's not a future. Youth, it's a present. And our will, it's strong to change Arab world and model for the coexistence, the development, and also the solidarity. Thank you.
I'm speechless. Thank you so much, Sukaina. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Amira. Thank you, Muad and Monica, for the strong messages you are sending from here. And we really hope that it will reach everyone that we would like that this message will target. Because we are here from different backgrounds, from different countries. We may speak one language, but it's not even in this one language. There is also other specificities. But the thing in us that gets us together is the dignity, the will, as Sukaina said, and the love to change. This love to change is through acceptance of all the differences and acknowledging that these differences is what makes us rich. Actually, our different religious backgrounds also can support into creating this interfaith and intercultural space for dialogue, because this is from where we start, starting from our inner, finding this inner peace in each one of us that will reach later on an outsider peace. And by here, respected guests here and distinguished guests, I would like to say, feel free. This is also a space for you to interact with our guests if you have questions or recommendations, or you want to explore more of each one's project. Okay, thank you. Microphone, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Maurizio Geri. I am Italian consultant for different think tanks. Thank you for this meeting. Very important. My suggestion is that besides, let's say, try to do some meetings with the decision makers and youth, another idea is also to do intergenerational dialogue. Because I was a youth activist also, now age passed, and they are going to do something similar in Congo, I think in November. And so another suggestion is also to see if the Arab world could let's say, connect with the rest of Africa, because the youth bulge is coming also from Sub-Sahara Africa. So these are my two suggestions, but thank you and for your work.
Thank you so much. Grazie
By the way, you are still young by your heart.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you for your words. My name's Yasmin from the UK. I wanted to ask, so the Arab region went through a period of Arab Spring, obviously, and there was a lot of youth involved in that. So how, after that, obviously, there came many challenges. We saw many youth and vulnerable people being silenced and oppressed by the state. How do we ensure that the changes that you are talking about, and which are important and critical and central to the region, aren't part of the cosmetic changes that the governments of these regions are trying to portray in a sort of PR exercise, as opposed to genuine change? Because we know that, I personally know many people that try to engage with policymakers, try to engage with governments, as you're speaking about, in critical and important changes, but were silenced or were imprisoned by the state. So how do we ensure that what we're doing is authentic and real and not cosmetic and part of a PR exercise? Thank you.
Let's make it. Thank you so much for your question, and I would like to make it as a place to directly collaborate or respond. So Sukaina, you want to
Actually,
answer?
I want to thank you for your questions. When we talk about the change, the word, we talk about the solutions. Especially, like, youth can be a key for change our society and the key actor in creating the activities and the opportunities to change in our societies. Engaging in the political action, also, and opening the opportunities of youth engaged to our government and to be a part for decisions. Integrating to achieve the sustainable development goals. Don't forget the plan 2030. It's our plan, and it's our way to have the change in South Africa, in Africa, and in the world, in Arab world. So that's what I can propose as a youth, as a Moroccan, as African, as a youth in Arab region. So thank you.
Thank you, Sukaina, for this motivational part. Yeah, when it comes to change, Sukaina is the ranked first in sharing these positive vibes about the change. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Thank you so much for the panel and, amazing work that you're doing and the contributions. It was just on something that Marcel had said, particularly in relation to the refugee crisis. So I've done some outreach work, and I was just speaking to one of the refugees from Iraq, and I said, so have you been to many places in Europe? He said, everywhere. And he said, I've been through the whole of Scandinavia, I've been to France, I've been to Germany. And I said, well, what was it like? I said, how did you survive? And he said, some of the countries are some of the most racist, so you would never believe it. And some of them have a real hatred towards religion, particularly Islam. Obviously, he was Muslim. And I said, well, how did you get through? He said, it's the determination, it's the freedom, right? It's something you're looking for. I guess my question is really about that concern that with so much of the world now, so the refugee crisis being a global crisis, the worry I have is about the youth that are born in the crisis, the children of the refugees, the ones that are so dispersed, and their identity and connection back to not just their homeland, but themselves, their religion, their culture, in this kind of mired and real complex picture. So I think, as young people, we really have a duty, not just to ourselves, but the future even after our time. So I think it'd be really wonderful to hear your reflections on how do we offer support in terms of their identity and even themselves as youth. How can they be empowered, especially given they'll be so far away from what they're used to?
Yeah, I think I don't have any word to tell the refugees. I think they are an example for a successful story, because they're still alive and they're still continuing their lives in any country they are. And yes, I think they are messengers of the peace. Yeah, they are refugees, but they escaped from their countries just to search for another place to live in peaceful situation. So actually, I don't have any word to them, but I just it's my commitment that I should mention this case in everywhere I go.
Thank you so much, Marcel. It's like always, you get us through this journey without moving from our places. But thank you so much for transmitting these feelings that makes us maybe feel more engaged toward countering hate speech, toward countering misinformation, disinformation that we are seeing a lot on media and social media that are creating and emphasizing this gap and this hate speech in the communities. But I would like to remind you, dear guests and dear partners and audience, that we are here trying to learn from each other's success stories and also trying to build bridges through breaking the barriers and taboos in our societies and communities. So the floor is open also for collaborations, for potential partnerships towards achieving a sustainable impact. Yes, our dear friend.
Yeah, Sandra from Lebanon. Okay, I'm so proud of you. And I'm also proud of myself for being part of KAICEED family and KAICEED efforts and initiatives. Let me say it as it is. Usually the main challenge we face is that other people are accusing us, just like we are in any interfaith dialogue, that we are leaving our religion. I want to ask from your experience how you can explain how this field helped you to be more involved within your religion, your community, because I feel this is the main aspect here. Every time we go on seminars, forums, we can see same faces just moving on from a place to another. So if you just convince them that we're not leaving anything, we're just trying to live together, share grassroots together, trying to solve problems together, it will be the best solution. So what is your insight regarding this?
Thank you so much, Sandra. And here I suggest that Amira, yes, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your question. I really loved it because, you mentioned that you feel like, there's accusations that you're leaving your faith or, you'd have to be in a certain way or whatever it is. And the lack of representation as well, as you've exactly mentioned. I've briefly said it, but doing this work that I do has made me connect to my own spirituality more, to my own faith more, because I've done a lot of grief work. And grief is about, it's not just someone dying, it's not about death itself, but it's also about losing and not gaining something. And that including the lack of representation in some forums, in some spaces. And it's exactly as you've mentioned. So when I've done this work and there was like this space of me connecting to different people of faith, different people from different religions really, and they were playing roles of people who are important in my life. So imagine someone who's, a Jewish and he's playing my father, and imagine someone who's from a different religion and they're playing my mother and so on. And that itself creates a connection And that itself made us connect to each other and connect to our own spirituality, regardless of how we choose the own practice of worship. Because we saw each other as humans, we saw each other as people with emotions, with stories, with sentiments. And regardless of what I do and my own relationship with it, and how my own perception of it, other people's perception of it, we connected and we made and created the presence and the intimacy, which is why I believe this work is really, really crucial and really important, because there is intimacy. So I would really like to thank you when you said there are accusations of you like leaving a religion, which is not something easy to say. And I'm telling you, like, I've felt that in a lot of times, like, oh, well, how you have to look in a certain way. Why would you work in this and why would you work? Which is a conversation in this room, which is why the dialogue itself exists, which is why I do the work that I do, because I want to connect. I want people to see me as a human being, and I see people as their human being, which is, the empathy that is created and the intimacy that we as human beings can connect to each other and to play different important roles to each other too in order to heal, which is basically the logo for this year, Time to Heal. So thank you so much for asking that.
Can I add something?
Of course,
yeah. But helping people or being a member of initiatives for helping people became a part of my identity. So yes, when I will introduce myself, I will introduce myself as a member of initiatives. So that was a part of my identity, and I'm so happy that I engaged in these initiatives and campaigns, and to learn from others.
Exactly, identity and this belonging, sense of belonging, looking for the inner humanity is actually what we use in conflict places and areas, is that we try to grab this deep humanity, dignity inside, in solidarity, yes, inside these souls and humans, to make them sit around one table discussing and find a common ground. And basically this happened through an interfaith and intercultural dialogue. So, and these experiences have worked widely and is being duplicated in multiple countries. And the different projects here are also having this approach of finding a common ground between all the different souls. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Amira. We have another question.
Yes, I wanted to just ask another quick question about your sustainability in the long term regarding fundraising, etc. Because many times the youth movement, there is always the motivation, but because also the lack of contact with the decision makers, and as I said earlier, the intergenerational dialogue is difficult to do that. So I think CAICID has its own plan, but what about your strategies at local level or international level? Here we have Mr. Mohammed that yesterday advocated a lot in the panel about the youth movement sustainability in the long term. So that was my another point. Thanks.
Thank you, grazie mille. This also was our discussion topic yesterday with Monica about the sustainability of the work that she started doing and implementing in Egypt. Monica.
Yeah. Specifically, we can use the internet and online platforms to maintain our sustainable impact on the ground. For example, our initiative has a website, and in this website, you can find all the materials of the initiatives, the training manual, so you can use on different interreligious programs. You can use within the religious institutions, again, to promote such training courses that focus on interreligious dialogue and peace building process. As well, you can see the initiative that participants implemented by themselves, like the link of Facebook page, which is also all publications that they have is found there, and the videos are published on the YouTube, so they can always maintain and reuse all these materials. So as well, for the sustainability with working with the policymakers, after we as a lesson that we learned through our initiative, we shared all this information and materials with our network from partners all over the world, as our organization working regionally and internationally as well, and even on national levels that we shared all the thoughts that we have with the partners, and we send the information of the mobile application to our ministry, so they can have and take a look of what we are doing, and if they want to promote such kind of work, so we can work together. And it's a little bit out of the topic, but it's related to the question that few days ago our president launched a strategy for promoting human rights and etc. And one of them are social and economic rights, besides for sure the civil and political rights, and includes the involvement of young people and the youth, and how in the future or the near future that in public institutions should work with the young people. And last thing, I want to get back to the lady here that mentioned about how we can promote the change and involvement young people, but not fake involvement like bringing on the table, but silent them. That we need to start to promote the bottom-up approach. So we are not waiting for the change to come from the up, from the authorities and governments, but we are, as a young people, we are the one who achieve the change. We are the one who working on ourselves, building our capacities, and as an NGOs and civil society also should support that, and promoting education, as my colleague Sukaina said, that qualifying young people to be the leaders of tomorrow and to be public leaders and integrating in public institutions and governmental and political lives that make them part of the government later, so no one can silence them for sure, but it's long-term process. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Monica. And allow me here, I will wear another hat, which is my original hat of being activist in Tunisia and in North Africa, using the media as a tool for development. I would say here that I'm sure that all of us, we use this approach, is that we don't just act on local events or local activities and that's it, but we work with the ground, with our audience, with our target. We try to understand them. Why understanding them? Because in the future we want to make a change, but this process from understanding to making the change comes through changing different things, which is changing the knowledge, changing the practice, and then changing the attitudes of the communities. When we reach this point of changing the attitudes towards positivity and towards acceptance, the differences, the inclusivity, countering the hate speech, etc., I am sure that all of us here, we are going to succeed in ensuring a sustainable development, sustainable peace. Without us or not, our partners, our local partners, our community will sustain, and this they will be the leaders, the ambassadors of the change themselves in the communities. Dr. Mohammed Renata, voilà, merci.
Sorry, I'm going first. I have a question, since I'm first of all, I'm very impressed with your work, and I've had the opportunity to talk to several of you personally as well. But part of the bottom-up approach, as you mentioned, Monica, is the ability to reach out to other youth and the ability to strengthen breaking barriers, crossing borders, and to grow your projects. So I would ask you, since you have us here, and we would also like to record this, what do you need from the world? What do you need from governments? What do you need from multilaterals? What do you need from international NGOs to help you expand your projects, grow them, to really break barriers?
Yes, Ma.
Well, thank you. It's a very important question and an idea need to be also talked about. Well, I think it's very Salman said about sustainability, that this is the sustainable work that we're trying to achieve. If I count my work, or if you count our work in our organization, or in any of us, if we stop doing that, if like Muad or Marcel or Sakina or Amira or Monica stop doing that for a second, should that program or should that work need to be dead and need to be buried and never to be talked about? This is what I mean when I say collective work. It means when the person have stopped or even moved to another level, the work is going to keep going, and the work's going to keep going because it has the governmental support, it has the NGOs enthusiasm and the energy, and also the fund, and all of these ideas create that sustainability that will make us reach to the point where we'll have I will say sustainable work, and work that will be beneficial to everybody. So I think what we want from the world, what we want for every stakeholders in that area, it's the collective work when everyone has its own role, where we achieve the goals and the ideas that we want.
Thank you.
I want to add something as well regarding the question of what we need from international organizations and government and international community. I think it's one thing, it's participation, but not only participation at one level, which is the implementation process. We need to sit on the table from the beginning. So not coming with the programs, with the agenda or the strategy, and just like say, okay, we need to sit with the young people and to start to see the action plan and how we're going to implement this. Or we need to find local partners to implement our program as an international organization in a specific country. No, we need to sit on the table first with those persons or the institution and see what the local reality, what we need, what our communities really need, which programs, which type, how we can implement that, and putting the call, putting the program, putting the strategy together. So participatory approach is needed to be activated from the beginning. So not only at the implementation, but all levels of process, we should be there, we should be integrated, we should put our touch, and yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Muhammad.
Yeah, thank you. I want to follow up on Sandra's question, which I think you avoided it, and you've been avoiding it, in my view, the entire panel. So I'm going to throw at the last 5 minutes a difficult question. So we have an Egyptian, 2 Saudi, 1 Syrian, 1 Moroccan, and 1 Tunisian. And you've been talking about the culture and the global youth engagement, but no reference to how you deal with your religious identity at the work. Which Sandra questioned, how do you deal with those in Egypt from the Muslim and the Christian religious institution who refuse to participate or who don't see you as part of their community? The same thing in Morocco, the same thing in Syria, and the same thing in Saudi Arabia. You talk about intercultural, but you left the religious identity, yours and the others, outside. So maybe you can shed a little bit of light how you individually handle this connection to your religious community.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for grabbing this question on the table. And I suggest, as you said, so we go one by one, showing us how you have dealt with or putting on the table your different religious background or your specific religious background on your work and implementing it.
Yeah. To be honest, it's a hard question, it's a difficult one, and I will try to be honest as much as I can. It's specifically for Egypt, it's a little bit hard to deal with the religious institution. Specifically for me as a Christian woman leading the program or initiative, so going to the Al-Azhar and talking that we want some religious leaders to be integrated in our program, or going to different churches because our initiative was inclusive, so we targeting as well as the different churches that we have, Orthodox, Catholic, and Angelic Church. So it's a little bit was hard, but Kaisid helped us a lot, and as well going to hold meeting in person. So we keep insisting that we need a meeting. It's just not an email or call phones or something like this. We need to sit in a meeting. And so when people start to talk and negotiate and start to convince them the program, how it's inclusive, how even that you refuse us, but you can show and present your view. You can say that I refuse you because of 1, 3, 2, 1 and 2 and 3, and that we can discuss, we can solve together the issue and so on. So at least not closing the door and said, I refuse everyone. So come to us and say that, what is the problem? Why do you refuse dealing with us and so on? So when we start talking to each other, we start dealing, we start to understand, so we start accepting step by step the atmosphere that we are working on.
Exactly. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. For this question. And I think it's also it's a bit different for the situation in Saudi Arabia, where the majority of the country are Muslim and Sunni. But it's also very important when we mention also the minority in Shia and Saudi Arabia and how we can have this common ideas or common dialogue. So when I say culture and when we use the word culture, and also when it's come to religion, it's very important that we look for the common ground. And this is what we're trying to do, and how we can have that dialogue. So if two parties having the same difficulty of sitting together, facing each other and having that conversation, it's where we have to look for the common ground between them and have that idea. And it goes on. And in Saudi Arabia, it's also very important, and we tackle that for many years, that we're trying to how we can create that common ground between Sunnah and Shia, and also for the people who have different background regarding religion, and also it has a culture, if I may use it in a different way. And also when like for the people who are living in Saudi Arabia and have the different background religion, it's where we have to look for the common ground, so we can use it in a cultural way and we use it in a religious way, and also make sure that they have this dialogue. And we said this word a lot of time in this forum, but it's also it's very important highlighting the safe space for everyone. And before it was, I will call it a war space, much as a safe space. So having the common ground with the safe space, it will make it a lot easier to have this conversation, to have this dialogue.
So much more. Yeah.
I can say it from the perspective of a Saudi Arabian Muslim woman, so that gives like a little bit of perspective. It's a very similar answer to yours, but from my own perspective, and especially with the work that I do, so for example, I'll give you, so I am a Muslim woman, and when I do the work, like when I study psychodrama and sociodrama and psychology and all of that, I'd have to travel a lot back and forth. And 100% of the time, it's not even 90%, 100% of the time, I'm the only young Muslim Saudi woman in the room studying that and working on that. And because it's a work that involves a lot of conflict resolution, it involves making the covert overt, and everything that's hidden, we have to put it on the table. All the perceptions are put on the table. So every perception I would get to hear, and every misconception too, I would get to hear. And it is a difficult question because you feel obviously a lot of pressure representing a whole lot of things and a lot of notions and ideologies. And it's not just about me anymore. It's about what's behind me and what's the overt and how I can make it safe in that and how I can answer to all of those questions. But because it is needed, and because whatever perception people have of what I represent, of how I look, and my ideologies and my religion and my country and all of that, I would have to speak for it. And I would only have to speak for it when someone actually points it out to me, because I wouldn't know. And if someone doesn't point it out to me, it's just gonna be murmur at the table. Like it's gonna be chatters around this corner and whispers here and all of that, and that's not really dialogue. But because I was privileged enough and I was lucky enough that this work involves conflict resolution, this work involves, hey, Amira, you look in a certain way, your religion is a certain way, you come from this specific country. We don't know anything about it. Can you tell us more about it? Because I think this and this and this and this about you. And then I would have to answer for it. But I was privileged because all my answers were developed in a safe space. And that privilege doesn't exist for a lot of people.
Also, as a Sian Christian man, I will encourage them to express their religious identity. And I will tell them that I will keep fighting for them to keep their identity, as I will fight for my identity also. Because we can live together, because we live together. And also, I will say that in public, that the Islam is a part of my history as a Christian. And yes, we can focus on the similarities. And I want to add one thing else, that as a Syrian Christian man, I feel that I'm closer to the Syrian Muslim people more than the European Christians people. So that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for your question. So for Morocco, as you know, it's the majority of the people, it's Muslim people. But we have also like Jewish people from Morocco also, I think also in the Tunisia. And what I can tell you about my experience with Jewish Moroccan people. So I think Morocco, it's different experience because we don't have a problem like in our religion. We focus on our goal. We focus on our solidarity more than the diversity. So, but what we need as Moroccan and African to be to accept the difference of the culture, religion, colors, and also the different political things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sukaina, Marcel, Amira, Muad, and Monica, and here, Dr. Dr. Mohammed. Thank you so much as well for your question. I wanted just to tell you that I know that these projects and these guys also, they are working on something that is related to communication actually for development. So they are not just working to connect and doing the intercultural dialogue, but also for interfaith development. So thank you so much for bringing this question to the table, and hope that all our dear partners have answered that. So as you saw, we are living here in our Arab world, actually in a multi-dimensional crisis, identical and natural catastrophes, wars, COVID, and whatever things happens here. So after hearing this, let's say, initiatives, stories, special stories from each country and from each one of you, I would like to thank these pure souls, these active change makers in their societies, and making the best of them, the best version of them to change. Because I know it's not easy at all being that activist in our Arab world without struggling, without suffering. So here from my place, I would like to congratulate you. Not only you, but also your families who've trusted you in and accepting all these new concepts in life and understanding it and supporting you toward making this change. I would like to thank you also, our respected guests here, for your time, for the energy you have put, for your questions, and also for your attention, because I'm sure that just after this panel, there will be the bridges that they will be built after that between you and them. But before we go, my friends here have sent me a message of hope, let's say, to tell you all about. So if we look, even in this room, we are all different. We can see difference everywhere, in our colors, in our nationalities even, the language that we speak, the orientations. We are people from different stories, different values, and different beliefs as well. So as a society, we are more religiously different and diverse than we have ever been. And as a society, we are facing conflicts as more than ever been before. But now it's time to heal from all these crises that we are living. One hand cannot clap. If we put all of us, our hands in each other's hands, we will make a difference. we can change the world. We are young people here, full of energy. And also you are here full of knowledge, full of grace, full of attitude. You have love, this dignity inside of you, all of us here. If we can put it together, we can make the change. And we can heal the world. We can be this inclusive world that we dream of and about. Thank you so much, KC team, for organizing this conference and for bringing together on the table these lovely souls and interactive stories to be shared. Thank you so much again, respected guests, and I hope that next year we will bring more stories, but stories of next year will be the inter-bridges, dialogues and communication and joint efforts between the both bridges, let's say here on the room. So we will present it as a success story of this year to build on it more in the upcoming period. Thank you so much for sharing, because I know that sharing is caring, so sharing is learning as well. Thank you so much, and thank you. Thank you, translation team as well, and everyone, Dima, Wasim, Shirin, and everyone. Merci beaucoup.